This happened about a year ago, which would make me 22 at the time. While I'm not a real looker, I do have a baby face, and creeps and other wannabes come up to me on the regular. I look barely of age with makeup on, and as a younger teenager on the regular. I'm a female, by the way, which in most cases makes me physically weaker than the grown men that approach me. I'm about 162 centimeters and tend to wear somewhat baggy clothes, which adds to my younger looks, I guess. Around 9 p.m., I got on the bus that I usually take, and I somehow managed to take a seat. At the next stop, I glanced around to see who got on the bus, trying to see if there were any elderly people, or just generally someone that seemed like they needed to take a seat more than me. That's when I noticed this plain-looking man. He was casually but decently dressed, and somewhere between lean and slim. He had a short buzz cut, probably to hide the fact that he was starting to go bald, I would imagine. But what I remember most vividly were his eyes. He was staring right at me. I started to feel uneasy, as most people divert their eyes after a time in situations like these. Now I know I tend to be a bit paranoid, so I tried rationalizing. Right after I looked away and through the window. It could just be that he was tired after a long day's work, and wasn't looking at me but kind of through me, without even realizing it. It's happened to me before. But there was something off about his look. It didn't seem blank, tired, or aloof. It was intense. I slowly looked back to look at him again, only to find him still staring at me with that same focus. I tried acting if I was just looking around, and then went back to looking at the window. I could see his reflection in the glass, so I kept an eye out for him. I still didn't feel afraid, just uneasy, since there were a lot of people on the bus, as well as quite a few stops until mine. And I was still convincing myself I was just being a little paranoid. The next stop came, and then the next, and then the next. He didn't get off. The only thing that had changed was that there were significantly fewer people on the bus, and he took the seat 2 rows in front of mine. However, instead of facing forward as a normal person would, he was turned to the side, which gave him a good view of me and the doorway. I thought about getting off a stop early and just walking home, but I quickly discarded the idea, since that could just provide him with more opportunity to corner me somewhere if he indeed tried to follow me. So, on to my next plan. I tried to act like I was oblivious to his intense staring. I'm not sure how convincing I really was, since most of the time when I try to fake something, I just get the perfect blank poker face. He didn't seem to change his behavior though, so I tried telling myself that at least I didn't give off the vibe that he was scaring me now. I was close to my stop and had decided to wait and exit at the last possible moment, when the bus stopped and it opened the doors. I looked out and then looked back again. I could see his body tense up for a second. A few people started getting in, and I saw him relax again. He never stopped staring. After the last person got on, I hurried up and out, a smile on my face. I thought that I had fooled him. Unfortunately, he jumped up almost at the same time as me and managed to get off as well. Not only did I not manage to lose him, but now he definitely knew I was trying to get away from him. I had no doubt that he was following me now. I wasn't sure what to do. My house was just 300 meters away, but I didn't exactly want him to know where I live. Apart from that, as cliché as it sounds, I do live on a small, somewhat secluded street that isn't well lit, and not many people can be seen on it at night. It doesn't even have sidewalks, so that should give you the idea about the traffic on it. My last hope was the crossroads that I needed to go over. Let me paint you a picture of it, since that is what saved me. So I got off the bus, walked down a bit and crossed the street to my left. From there, I had to walk from a green light and cross the street again. And then I just had to go uphill for about 150 meters. And then, on the first street to my left, 100 more meters and then I was home. The thing was, when the light turns red for the cars on my left, it's still green for the cars coming from the right. After about 15 seconds it turns red for them too, and then about 10 more seconds and the light turns green so that people on foot can pass by. I couldn't be sure since it's not a small city or neighborhood that I live on, but I hoped that he wasn't from around and that he wouldn't know about the traffic lights. So I tried playing it cool, pretending not to notice that he was constantly about 2 meters behind me, like a freaking not-so-subtle shadow. As luck would have it, there wasn't too much traffic coming from my right, but there was some. I waited for the next car to come up, not too close and not too far. Just enough for me to run across the street, but to prevent him from following directly behind. I remember hoping that he wasn't from around here again, before I started running. I guess he wasn't expecting that. I glanced quickly behind me and saw him starting to cross, but then backing up since there was still traffic coming from the right. This was when my luck doubled. A bus was heading my way to the stop that's right beneath the corner of my street. I'm pretty short, so I maneuvered my way through the crowd of people that just formed, hoping that he would lose track of me since most of those people, as most people in general, were taller than me. I managed to get to my street, but I figured he wasn't far behind. I didn't want to run up straight to my house since he could easily spot me. I decided to crouch between 2 parked cars right at the corner. I figured it was a good hiding spot. The street was dimly lit, and I could peek through the car window, but he couldn't easily see me. After a few seconds, there he was, right at the corner. I could see that he was breathing somewhat heavily, and he just stood there. He peered into my street as if straining to see if I was somewhere in the distance. Even though it was dark, I was so scared he could somehow see me. And then he looked up ahead of him with the same expression. I didn't dare move, and after what seemed like an eternity, he decided to go up instead of on my street. But I still didn't want to move. I kept thinking what a stupid decision he had made. There was no way I could have gone up fast enough for him not to see me had I went there. I was afraid he would realize that and come back. After a while, I honestly don't know how long, it could have been just seconds. I figured it would be stupid for me to wait for him to come back, so I rushed home. I made sure everything was locked after I got in, and I was never so glad to see my dad home. In hindsight, I could have just called my dad and asked him to come pick me up at the bus stop. I have no idea why that thought never crossed my mind. It would have been the smart thing to do. A few years ago, I was on my way home. I usually take the bus, even though I'm pretty uncomfortable with strangers being too close to me. But I have no driver's license and therefore not much of a choice. Anyway, I'm sitting there next to the window, listening to music as a man sits down next to me. I don't think much of it, the bus is pretty full. I slide a little closer to the window, so that the man does not come too close to me. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice that he keeps looking at me, which makes me very uncomfortable. So I obviously look out the window and try to ignore him. Luckily, we are close to my stop. As the bus drives up to said stop, I shuffle around a bit and get up halfway. As far as I'm concerned, this is a normal social cue for strangers on a bus that I want to get out at this stop, and for them to let me get past their seat. Well, this guy doesn't see it that way. So I take out my earbuds and I tell him politely that I need to get out at this stop and ask him to let me through. He grins and says, no. I didn't want to push past him because he then has direct access to my body, and now I'm really anxious. I think he sees it and takes up even more space so that I can't get past him. I also noticed that he looks really unkempt and is about double my age. I was around 26 at the time. Also, I'm a rather petite girl and do not come across as very threatening or something. So I say again that I have to get out, this time very loud, so that other passengers can hear me and help in case of emergency. The man lets me pass, but still does not give me much space. When I finally get out and walk in the direction of my apartment, I notice that the man is behind me. I get scared. It's winter, and even if it's not too late, it's already very dark, and in the city, there wasn't much going on. I call the friend and ask if I can come to her so the man will not find out where I live. We stay on the phone all the way until I get with her. When I finally arrive, I turn around for the first time. The man is still there and he grins at me. In the apartment, we keep looking out the window, but the man is gone. My friend walks me home later. I haven't seen the man since then, but I'm still nervous about having to take the bus, and I always try to stay as close to the driver as possible. As for calling the police, I had thought about it, but he was gone quite soon after I arrived at my friend's place, and to be honest, I was in similar situations before and I did call the cops, but nothing ever came out of it, so why even bother? Plus, he could have just had the same way home as me or something. Anyway, I never saw him again, and neither did my friend. I'm a 22-year-old female, and I go to a university with a fairly large campus. There are 2 bus stops, one newer one near the main part of campus, and the older one at the end of the parking area by the vet buildings. I usually use the new one, but I used to have a lecture that ended at 6:30 p.m. that was in one of the vet buildings, and I didn't want to have to walk up a hill to the new one when the old stop was so close. That decision almost got me into a world of trouble. So, it was already dark and starting to rain a little bit. The stop didn't have any bus shelter back then, and it wasn't well illuminated, as there was only the one streetlight off to the side. They've since updated it and it's well lit. I was standing under my umbrella in the near darkness, praying for a bus when, lo and behold, a bus arrived. But as I got closer, my heart sank. Not in service was flashing across the sign in the front. It was going to just go past me. But then the driver must have seen how miserable I had looked, or maybe he realized how dangerous it was when I hadn't. Either way, he decided to stop. He pulled over and told me to hop in, and to not bother tagging on, so I even got a free ride. So I hopped off at the station and I thanked him profusely, and I made my way home none the wiser. The next day, I told my friend what had happened, and she had told me this. About 5 minutes after I got on that bus, a girl was attacked near her car about 10 meters from where I had been standing. She luckily got away and ran back to the vet buildings, and the guy took off. I don't know if they ever caught him. I have to wonder if that guy was there while I waited for the bus, and what would have happened if that angel of a driver hadn't picked me up. Would I have been attacked instead of her? That thought chills me to the bone, and I don't use that stop unless I'm with a friend now, and certainly not after dark. This happened today. If you need a visual, I'm female in my late 20s but look young for my age. I'm 5 foot, admittedly on the plumper side of mixed race, and was in work-appropriate shorts and a shirt. For a number of reasons, I take the bus to and from work, and today was no exception. Thanks to what's been going on around the world, the ones I use run every hour. So I've changed from taking 2 buses to just one, and walking the rest of the way. It started off fine, but thanks to progressively worse situations culminated into what happened today, I'm rethinking my commute. The first time that I saw him was this morning on my way to work. I had just gotten off the bus and was walking towards the crosswalk, passing small stores and parking areas as usual. For context, I have clinical anxiety, and to keep myself calm when I'm traveling to and from work, I have earbuds in playing music, so I didn't hear the specifics of what he was saying. At first, I ignored the shouting, figuring someone was just upset that these shops were still closed. But it kept going as I got closer, so I turned off my music in case something was off. Spoilers, it was. The shouting came from a man young enough to not have noticeable gray in his long, dark brown hair and beard, most likely homeless and not wearing a mask. If he was dirty or greasy with holes or stains in his clothing, I couldn't tell you because I was focused on getting to work with time to spare. When I turned my music off, I realized that he was shouting at me, calling me a B as I passed him, telling me to keep going like I just insulted his mother. I've been told not to engage with someone who seems mentally unstable, so not wanting to aggravate him anymore, I stayed quiet. He kept shouting as I got further away, even as I was on the other side of the street, with me keeping my music off just in case he decided to follow me, not even looking back until I couldn't hear him anymore. I would have chalked it up to a weird encounter had it been a one-time thing, but things got worse when work was over and I was heading towards the bus stop that would take me home. Again, earbuds were in, music playing. Only this time my legs were bordering on tormenting me for being on my feet for hours. You gotta love retail. As I got closer to the stop, I noticed that someone was there as well. I brushed it off, hoping it wasn't another pothead talking to himself, or a guy who didn't know about being in the middle of a pandemic. Nope, it was worse. The shouting guy from this morning, and he was still shouting. Even without my anxiety, I was scared. I didn't have a lot of options, and I'll admit the one I picked wasn't the best one. I turned off my music once again and kept walking to the bus stop, figuring that he would let me pass like last time. Another nope. In the hours that had passed, he had claimed the bus stop and didn't want anyone else there. I was a foot away from the bus stop bench when he gets close, shouting how I was a B and a C, and that this was his bus stop, pointing behind me to turn around and to go back. I didn't think that he would get close enough to feel his spittle hit my face, threatening to break my sunglasses as he stood in front of me, moving left and right when I did to avoid him. While this was going on, a woman and her wheelchair-bound son, someone that I've seen around, were coming out of the McDonald's beside the stop. The son was noticeably special needs and was moaning at the man's loud shouting. He then directed his insults at the son, which made him moan louder. On one hand, I wanted to kick him below the belt and stand my ground as he cried on the sidewalk. On the other hand, I'm much too passive, shocked, and desperate to avoid conflict of any kind. So I took several steps away from the man, keeping quiet and trying to think of what to do. Enter the hero of this tale. The guy with the dog and who I assume was his daughter. I remember him asking me if the man was keeping me from the bus. I didn't say anything. Not sure why, but it could have been a protective measure. I might have nodded, but I'm not sure. The guy confronted the shouting man who had no intention of leaving. Then the guy passes these dog's leash to the girl before shoving the man in the chest. The fight, or whatever it was, lasted for a few seconds, before the shouting man turned around and walked away, the situation ending with the trio walking away, the woman and son leaving, me sitting down until the bus arrived 2 minutes later, and the shouting man far away from us all. I'm safe at home now, the shock worn off as well as the heart-racing panic from the situation. Needless to say, I hope I never see the shouting man again, but to the man who drove him away, thank you so much.